Hello everybody and welcome to the first webinar showcasing the winners of IAB Europe's 2017 MIXX Awards Europe. I'm really delighted to welcome you today. I'm Alison Fenner, Executive Business Advisor at IAB Europe, and I'm going to host the session. So as background, the MIXX Awards Europe recognise and celebrate the year's best digital advertising campaigns across the region. In this webinar, we're going to share with you winning campaigns of the video advertising, branded content, integrated advertising, and virtual and augmented reality categories. The webinar is going to last about 40 minutes, 35 for the presentations and a 10-minute Q&A. So the campaigns today are available in the best practice areas of our website. And if you want to share the live presentation with your colleagues or recap later, the webinar recording is going to be available after the event also on our website. So in terms quickly of housekeeping, there's a chat panel on your screen and a Q&A panel on the right-hand side. If you want to submit any technical queries in the chat panel, please do that and the IAB Europe team will respond to those. And you can submit questions for the speakers using the Q&A panel. So we'll answer questions live during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. And if you need help at all, you can raise your hand by clicking the red exclamation mark icon just above the chat panel. So just to recap on that, technical issues come via the chat panel and questions for the speakers via the Q&A panel, okay? So I'm delighted to introduce today's speakers, who are Resh Sidhu, Creative Director from Framestore, and Ezra Ezibey, who's Nike Client Lead at Mindshare Turkey. So first of all, I'm going to hand over to Resh from Framestore, who's going to talk us through the Fantastic Beasts campaign. Welcome, Resh.
Hi.
Hi, there you are, great. Okay, you've got control of the slides now, Resh, so the floor is yours, thanks.
Fantastic, thank you for that, and thank you for that setup, that was great. Hello to everybody listening, and my name is Resh Sidhu. I'm the Creative Director of VR here at Framestore. I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes or so just talking to you about one of our favourite projects launched last year. And we have a second release coming out this year as well, and that was the Fantastic Beasts project for J.K. Rowling and Warner Brothers. So I want to begin just by talking a little bit about the opportunity that we had with this project. So Framestore had an amazing relationship with Warner Brothers Studios, and it was in early 2016 we received a call. And really it was my dream brief because I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, as are my kids. And we jumped on the call expecting to do a VR experience for Harry Potter, but discovered that we were not only making the visual effects for the Fantastic Beasts film, but Warner's wanted us to think about an experience that would really immerse people into the wizarding world. And that's really where the journey began. We began thinking about what we could do, the fact that this was a completely different narrative, and the fact that also we were going to have to try to do something that delivered on being a wizard and being part of J.K. Rowling's world. Our first step really was to think about the platform, the technology, and the story. And ultimately, we designed something that was exclusive for Google's Daydream platform, and I'll speak a little bit later on about what it was like to design for hardware that was still being developed. And what we ultimately did is we created a first-of-a-kind VR experience where you become a wizard. You have a Daydream controller in your hand, which turns into a wand. And with the flick of the controller, you can tame, charm, and you can conjure your way through the story. So we introduced over 20 different spells and interactions. There are 3 very different storylines. And what brought it all together, it was narrated by star Eddie Raymond. So let me take you back to kind of where it all began. And ultimately, it was really about understanding the story. We knew this project was going to be challenging from the start. How do we make audiences feel part of the wizarding world? And bear in mind, this was a completely different story to Harry Potter. It was about Newt Scamander, a wizard. And then how do we build for an entirely new Google platform? So this was hardware, VR hardware that had not been released. And then our ultimate goal was how do we make this feel, from a visual quality point of view, as amazing as the movies themselves when we're producing something for a mobile phone. So we started very early on. What you can see on the screen is some very early kind of sketches and some of our early concept art. And the moment we jumped on the phone and spoke to our visual effects supervisor, who was on set making the film, he spoke around about the story and all the things that were happening. And there was this moment when he said, so this wizard, Newt Scamander, has this suitcase. And he can place the suitcase anywhere, open the suitcase and step into this magical world where he keeps all of his fantastic creatures. And it was at that moment that we all knew that that would be the perfect thing that VR could really amplify. There was no other medium that would allow anybody to step into the world quite the way that VR could. So we had our idea very early on. And what we began to do, our process of working in the VR space, is we were building early prototypes. So that image on the bottom left is one of our very early grey box prototypes, grayscale prototypes of the suitcase. When we shared this with Warner's team, without any of the fidelity, without any of the artwork and the visual graphics, they completely understood how it would feel to go inside the suitcase. So that was super exciting. So our approach has always been to find a point in the story that we can really immerse users into, and then we prototype very early on to validate the idea. And this really became our ethos all the way throughout the project and a great way of working. Our next step really was then to think about how we take that film script narrative and turn it into something that we call a VR script. We established that being in the experience and being a wizard wasn't really going to be enough. We needed to give people a role and a purpose. When people go into VR, often the first thing they kind of question is, who am I and what am I here to do? So we established that the user, or the wizard, is there to help Newt Scamander take care of his creatures. So you understand that you're there to look after these beasts. And the key for me was really allowing people to explore the environment. So not only did we create immersive interactions, we also created moments of magic where your interactions would be rewarded with a reward. And ultimately, meeting the creatures. And for this experience, we introduced the user to 3 of J.K. Rowling's Fantastic Beasts, and there's a real sense of awe and wonder, and we wanted to bring people as close to them as possible. So how did we take fans kind of beyond the film and into the wizarding world? Well, we gave them freedom to explore. What was great about having the Google Daydream, although it wasn't like the higher-end VR headset, it did have a controller, which meant that you had that immediate interactivity, which gave users a sense of agency when they really felt like they were present in that space. So we allowed people to explore from the New York apartment down into Newt's shed, into the courtyard, and then meet 3 beasts in their environments. Wizards can apparate, and apparate for non-Harry Potter fans means transport, and you can transport into each of the environments, and there are objects to pick up and items to cast your spells with. When we were testing this earlier on, we found that the more interaction we gave people, the more engaged they were with the storyline, the more they wanted to learn and discover. And then, how did we turn the visual quality into something that would really make people believe they were truly there? We worked very, very closely with our on-set VFX supervisor, and our relationship with the film production team and our VR team was critical to the success of it because we were utilizing assets from set. We used hundreds and hundreds of visual references. We took LiDAR scans of the set. And all of this really helped us to recreate the scenes with so much detail and accuracy that when someone went to watch the film and then did the VR experience, they really felt like they were being transported into the experience. We tested each of the environments, we tested which interactions worked and helped inform the narrative, and then people really began to believe that they were in this space. And then really, ultimately, the magic was really in the story. How do we marry the story with these beautiful environments? And so, going back to what we said in the beginning, we established that we established a sense of purpose. People were there for a reason, and that reason really was to help Newt look after his creatures. So, with the wand in hand, Newt's VO, his voiceover, helps ground you to what he needs your help with. And when people found like they were a little bit lost or they weren't sure what to do, he was always on hand to give that support. You're the principal character in this experience. You're the protagonist. And we really made people feel like and believe like they were there. There were sound cues that were triggered depending on where you were looking. There was a fusion of fiction and directional gameplay. And this was a very unique approach. And we creatively led the VR script, and we worked closely with J.K. Rowling and her team to really craft a story that remained true to these characters. So you were able to meet the three of the beasts. You must first complete a task. When your task is complete and you have an object to take with you out, you then go greet the creature. And so you're rewarded. And what we made sure we did was we really maintained the integrity of the narrative. That was very important to us. One of the things that we learned working with Rowling's team is remaining in the wizarding world is very important when it comes to whether doing an experience in VR or AR. I will give you an example. When we were first doing the experience, we had VO, which explained to the user that they must point and click the controller in their hand. And we got feedback from Rowling's team saying, well, that's just not going to work because wizards don't click. And it was that insight and that kind of feedback that made us really hone in this experience to make it as believable as possible. And yes, we're using VR, which is a completely new technology, and you have a controller in your hand, but we never lost sight of the fact that ultimately you are a wizard with a wand. And we wanted to make people really believe that that's part of the journey that they were taking. So we created a series of challenges. There is a magical scroll that awaits you when you go inside the suitcase, and on the scroll there are a number of instructions that the user follows. There was complexity even around this. When we were doing some of the early challenges and we tested this in VR, most of the team are gamers, but what we had to be mindful of is the end user was actually going to be families. Harry Potter fans can range from 5-year-olds up to 80-year-olds. So they don't necessarily know how to do gaming kind of challenges or tasks. Some of our early challenges were too difficult for even some of the team to complete, so we had to really hone them in and make them enjoyable but also achievable. A series of the unique narratives that we created, you complete the task and it teaches you a little bit about each creature. In this task, for example, you're going to meet the Thunderbird. The Thunderbird is actually from Arizona and is a native Indian bird. And what we did is we created this musical box with native Indian symbols. When you combine the symbols to match the pattern, then it creates a musical call to summon the Thunderbird when you go out into the courtyard. And we were defining these characteristics of the creature, and we were learning all about these beasts as we went along. We placed mysterious objects throughout the whole of the environment. So if you were engaged in completing the task, you could do that. But if you just wanted to explore and, look under books and see what was on the shelves, we encourage people to do that. You could interact with hundreds of objects. You could explore in the courtyard. And then ultimately you can get up close and personal with one of the fantastic beasts. So building the experience so it was super immersive, we wanted to make sure that we had coupled all of those interactions in a way that didn't distract from the story and kept people engaged. And it was all these little interactions with scrolls and with completing a charm, completing a gesture, learning your wand skills, and then going out into the courtyard that really made people feel like they were a wizard. One of our toughest challenges was working with the Google Daydream because what we had to do is make sure that when people were using the controller, that one, the controller worked with the mobile device, and two, people felt like it wasn't too complicated and difficult to do. And then the biggest challenge that we had was ultimately bringing those fantastic beasts to life. One of the toughest tasks that we ever have in VR is when we're creating mobile VR, we want to create world-class visual effects, but we're running that off a mobile device. And so there's always trade-offs, something has to give. Our challenge on this was to make the beasts look as amazing as they do in the film. We wanted them to feel believable. We wanted them to have their own characteristics and mannerisms. And our visual effects animation team worked meticulously from day one. We had videos that were carefully choreographed. What you can see on the screen on the left is some very early examples of the Graphorn, which is the beast on the top, and the lovable Arumpant, which is the beast on the bottom, and how we kind of began to prototype them early on. When you go and meet these creatures, they all have their own unique mannerisms. The Arumpant is almost like a lovable puppy and just wants to be loved, whereas the Graphorn is this huge, you know, over 20 feet majestic creature. The models from the filmmakers were taken, so that means that we optimized, that we had a very robust VFX to VR pipeline, and they were streamlined so that we could really make best use of assets. We had to build rig systems, shaders, and even feather systems, as well as all of the other game engine elements within the VR experience. Our ultimate goal from Warner's and J.K. Rowling really was to bring their personalities to life, to make people feel like they went beyond the movie, and to bring each creature as close as possible to the user. And ultimately, one of our toughest challenges was the Thunderbird. One of the memorable moments in this project was when we were deciding on which one of the beasts we would put forward in this VR experience. And I remember our visual effects team had said, whatever we do, don't do any creatures with fur and feathers. And the reason for that was we only really ultimately had about 8 weeks to do this project, 8 to 12 weeks. So what that meant is the team had limited time to produce world-class graphics. When we came back from the meeting, I had to break it to them that the beast that J.K. Rowling wanted in this experience was the Thunderbird, which unfortunately was a 6-winged beast, which meant we had to create feather systems for him. And what was interesting is the team really took to that challenge. They created feather systems, they created a 6-winged Thunderbird, and we created seamless interactions. So when you go into the courtyard and have completed your challenge and you meet the Thunderbird, you're able to feed the Thunderbird with a great big bug, throw that up in the air and feed the Thunderbird, and you can summon the Thunderbird from the skies with your music box. With each of the creatures, we created 3 different unique interactions. The Arumpant, for example, will drop down to the ground and she will do a little roll for you, exactly like she does in the movie. And the Graphorn, well, the Graphorn's got a nasty little cold, and you give the Graphorn a potion to help relieve its cold. All of these elements were created to make you feel like you went beyond, not only beyond the movie, but into the wizarding world, and you could get up close and personal with these creatures. What was great about the project was utilizing the interactive elements of doing mobile VR that is non-passive and pushing the users beyond the story and feeling like they were a wizard. We've been lucky enough this year to be doing a part 2 of this experience where we've introduced a further 3 beasts into the VR experience. So you're able to complete more challenges, conjure more objects, and tame more of the beasts. The experience really gives an example of how far VR's come. And it genuinely feels, when people use this and we were, testing the experience, they genuinely felt like for one small moment they were standing right inside the wizarding world. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Resh. That was absolutely fascinating. And I'm really looking forward to being able to asking you some questions at the end of this session. So I'm now going to hand over to Ezra, who's going to talk about the Nike Spark Brilliance campaign, which in addition to winning a few categories, also won the MIXX Awards Europe Grand Prix Award. So that was the Best of Best Awards. So Ezra, over to you. Welcome to our webinar.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, guys.
That's it. You've got your sound's on. You've got us.
Great. I'm starting then. Hello, everyone.
No, that's fine. That's super. You got control of the slides. That's great.
Okay. It's Esra from MIXX Turkey, and today I will try to share with you our EuroCup journey, which we love, and I hope you will also like it. So before starting, please keep the point of view that this activation has the adaptive marketing at heart during all stages, all consolidated with as one team with Nike, MIXX, and our creative agency, White Nine Kennedy. All regards to them. So let's talk about our city first. It's Istanbul. We love this picture as Istanbul yachts. They really call it chaos, especially lately, but it's our home. And it's really hard for the kids, which in media we call target audience, but they are like our kids and FOTs, to believe that they can make it out of the streets to the big leagues. And it really requires hustle, belief, and passion. It's similar in similar countries. It's really a big dream. So when there is a role model, it's easier because when you see someone make it happen, you believe actually maybe you can also make that happen. So hopefully we had like Arda Turan, and he was just freshly transferred to Barcelona just before EuroCup. And Turkey was at EuroCup after 8 long years. It was the first time we were actually at EuroLeague. So it was a good time. And we knew that we needed to be adaptive and interactive, so it was a dual process for us. It should be Turkish national team on one side, and on the other side the kids, and interacting on both sides. So we wanted to go with Spark Brilliance. This was the tagline. So what we call FOT is basically 15 to 19 males, and football is an obsession for those kids. So they are differentiating with ultimate football criticism. What does this mean? So they go to all countries, Nike, and they discovered that in Turkey, the kids are really like commentators. They all have ideas. They want further information. They are like their dads, let me say. They are not like kids. So this was an interesting insight for us. So it wouldn't be just enough to provide a simple, inspiring experience for them, but we needed to like really force what we can do. So we knew that we went for the deeper media insights. We knew that they were cyber social, following new technology, and they really loved it. Connected, that's important. And mobile is like really bigger than digital for them. And this is a really niche insight for Turkey. And we knew that TV viewership during live football events is really 2.4 times higher versus regular times. They don't watch TV much from the main screen, at least, anymore. And we knew that another screen is possible. So imagine we are planning this nearly, let me say, 2 years ago from now. And it came out that 78% it goes up during the live games. So we decided to hijack a broadcast TV movement and transform traditional TV viewing into a more immersive, exclusive, and personal brand experience, which is suitable for the kid who differentiates with his football POV from all other kids around the world. So that's how we came up with the Spark Brilliance idea during the game. So technically, it's an audio signpost. We call it also watermark that automatically recognizes the sound from the TVC, which isn't, okay, like you can't hear it with human ears, but the technology enables it. And it creates a trigger which loads a real-time interactive 360 video experience on mobile. So as far as we know, this was the most scalable, first time ever 300 video experience on second screen, which was triggered from the TV. And we also wanted to create the atmosphere in line with the positioning. So what we did is, we had the trigger moment. It was the national game halftime with Austria. So it was the halftime, the whistle blown, and the national team is heading to the locker room. So at the same time, we had the TV ad spot as a first positioning on TV, and they saw the two run in the regular TV spot. And if they were on the second screen, and they were on the second screen actually, automatically they had the 360 locker room, and they were just like within the team, and they were just able to interact with the video, and it was like they were actually in the locker room. But this was a creative which was like prepared months ago, but it was kind of like a live event, and they thought it was live, and we did our best to create this experience. They could also send messages to Turkish national team. They weren't only inspired, but they were also able to inspire back because the team needed it. Like it was chance, the game was also not going very well for the Turkish team. So it was a really, luckily and in details, created actuation for us. So we aimed to, and we achieved to put the fans inside the Turkish locker room. So it was unintentionally, but we really believed the actuation. We only thought about the kids, and we only thought about how to make this happen in the most adaptive way. And it turned out to be the most awarded mobile actuation in 2016, both in MIXX Turkey and in MIXX Europe, and also 30 plus like local and regional global awards. So thanks a lot.
Thanks very much, Ezra. So now we're going to move to our questions, and we've got two really different campaigns there. So very different focus subjects. So it'll be really interesting to try and probe a little bit more and find out more about, I think, the successes of the campaigns and what they've led you to think about for the future. So I think for Resh, let's have a look at what we've got. I think for Resh, I think one of the key things is that as VR is so new in terms of its role within digital advertising campaigns, could you give us some pointers, please, on you know, did your idea of what role this campaign might play within the overall Fantastic Beasts campaign? Did your idea change from when you started off with the planning it to how it eventually turned out and what it actually delivered for you? Were they two very different things, the starting objective and the kind of delivery at the end?
Yeah, I think you're right. VR is still a very new medium, and one of the things that we've learned over the past kind of few years of creating some of these VR experiences is everything that we kind of present or conceive at the beginning, the ideas that we have, is often very different to what we end up with at the end. The objective remains the same, and I think that's a key differentiator. The objective and the goal remains the same, and if that is core, what we do is that we test so aggressively all the way through the experiences that we create. We're constantly checking that, does this feel right? Does it feel right in VR? And that's literally because it's uncharted territory. We're doing things that no one's ever done before. It's a completely different user experience. It's not the same as being on your laptop or being on your mobile phone device or even doing an AR experience. It's different. So what we have to do is establish the rules and the parameters around that. What's great is when we have clients like Warner's and IP like, you know, J.K. Rowling's, is that you have an immediate fan base that are hungry for content, and you have a client that is pushing a new way to interact with the audience. And that's the key goal, is what is it we are trying to do? If we're going for reach, then VR potentially is not the right platform to do that. Mobile is a better platform to do that. But if we are going for, to really make people feel like they're part of the story, to bring them closer to it, to make something more immersive, to have something like that, an event, or for the launch of something, then VR really becomes a compelling medium to be able to do that.
And do you think, can I ask you a follow-on question to that? So most, I think that many clients would not stipulate that kind of emotional reaction to the campaign as a key KPI that they were looking for in their broader media planning. So do you see that changing now? Do you see more clients realizing that they need to kind of shift their KPIs a bit more towards that, a deeper emotional engagement in order to achieve their objectives? Do you think there's a kind of a fundamental shift in, based on how people are engaging with different media, what the clients are aiming to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're seeing with VR, what we're finding is that, Goldman Sachs last year predicted that VR will outpace TV advertising, and that's not surprising, because a lot of TV advertising, consumers are becoming really desensitized to it. We don't watch it, not engage with it. So when you have a medium like VR, it becomes very compelling because you ultimately have the user's undivided attention. The challenge is creating experiences that are, as you said, going to, be emotional, tie into the brand values, and create something that is entertainment. And I think brands that are adopting VR and using it to create purposeful experiences are really finding the rewards and the benefits of that. It is creating an emotional connection with your audience in a way that's not been done before. And that, in terms of KPI and measurement, is priceless. The challenge is right now, because it's an early medium, sometimes it's difficult to measure that, but we're going to see a huge uplift in the next few years of AR-related and VR-related content, and we certainly see an appetite from consumers for the bigger IPs and the bigger brands coming into that space and doing something relevant.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you very much. And I guess in the same way, if we move to Ezra, this campaign that you've delivered, Ezra, again, it's all about the kind of the closeness of the experience, isn't it? And delivering something that's unique and is engaging the consumer in a very special way.
One-time experience.
Sorry, you weren't on mute. You were still a bit on mute then. Do you want to just start again? Thanks.
Thanks. Yes, our ambition was to create the one-time experience, because the game will not ever be live again, and that's very specific moments wouldn't be ever replayed again. So yes, it had the experience, the most realistic and unique experience at heart.
Thank you. And I just wanted to ask both of you a question in terms of the target audience and the reach that your campaigns delivered. Were you surprised, Resh, in terms of what you eventually achieved as the target audience? Was that the same as what you set out to achieve, or was it broader in terms of the age group, etc.?
I think it was interesting. Harry Potter fans and J.K. Rowling fans are, as I said, they kind of range from 5-year-olds up to 80-year-olds, and there were two things that were happening. Obviously, people were super excited about trying something in VR for the first time. This experience actually was still some people's very first taste of VR, so that was kind of the factor that was drawing them in. So using the technology to hook people in was an interesting way to get them engaged with the brand. And then on the other side, we had 5-year-olds and we had 80-year-olds. And we had such a range, and it was absolutely thrilling to see how engaged they were. What was interesting when they came out of it is a lot of people were saying that they wanted it to be longer, they wanted to be able to do more interactive things, and they wanted to have a duel, and it's almost the best things to hear, because it really shows that you know, the best type of technology is when it's invisible, and you know, consumers don't realize what's happening, and they're so engaged with the story and they're so engaged with the experience. And I think this is a true example of that. What's been great is it did launch exclusively on the Daydream headset, but now it's been rolled out to all of the other VR headsets, which means it's getting in the hands of more people, and that's what we want to see.
That's great. Okay, and I just wanted to follow up because we've had a couple of questions also for Ezra around the audio signpost and how that works. So I just wondered if you could just expand for us, Ezra, a little bit based on the question that you've seen on your screen and answered about the audio signpost. You wanted to just expand for all of the audience about that.
I'm not getting well with this mute thing.
You're not getting that.
Yeah, I'm sorry about it. Yeah, so we placed basically a watermark with our technology company, AMVG. They are locally based, a WPP company in Turkey. So they didn't need a app. That was our ambition. But they, of course, required to be one of the most likely to visit websites. So it wasn't just a single website. We had a range, and it also required a technical structure to work. So we proceeded with the second screen app of the TV channel who broadcasted the game. This is one of the insights. They check for the highlights and everything. And the second one is a local social network, let me say. So it would be high reach in estimation, and it actualized so I will also share the case video. Yeah, like we have a case video which we also utilize for award entries. So this is the most detailed one. I will share with you, Fabio. Thank you for your question.
Thanks very much. So I think that's answering most of the questions that we've got for today. So all that remains for me to do is to thank our speakers. So thank you very much, Resh and Ezra, for spending your time with us today and sharing those insights on those two really fascinating campaigns. That's really useful for us, and you know, it really proves the worth of having being able to get visibility for you guys via the competitions, but also providing learning for everybody out there in the marketplace. So that's really useful, and thank you very much for that. Thanks very much to everybody for attending today's MIXX Awards Europe webinar. As I said earlier, this was the first in the series, and there's a second webinar coming up on the 5th of December, so make sure you sign up for that. That is about delivering efficient digital advertising campaigns. As I said earlier, the recording from this webinar will be available soon on our website, and there's a survey at the end of this webinar, so please do provide us with your feedback on that, and also look out for next year's MIXX Awards, because we'll be opening the entries for those in December this year. Okay, so thanks very much from us, and look forward to speaking with you again soon.